Hey guys, my name is Mando and it's time for another stay-at-home video. Right now we're here at the lovely Stedman-Finley-Collins-Burkwet Bridge and we're about to take a walk through our redwoods to learn about our forest, its different components, and we're going to decide whether or not this forest is healthy. But first, before we begin, we're going to do a little activity. So how this is going to work is you're going to grab your nature journal and an adult, and if you haven't had a chance yet to see Goose's video, it's on our channel and he explains how to explore safely. So you're going to go into a park or maybe just your backyard and you're going to write down a list of every single organism you can find, from the tallest tree down to the smallest beetle. And if you don't know what kind of animal or plant you're looking at, that's okay. You can just write down a description like beetle with the red spots. You're also going to keep count of how many of them you can find. So maybe it's 12 beetles with the red spots and 3 trees with the long leaves. And you're going to have 10 minutes to see how many you can find. All right, I'll see you on the other side. Oh, didn't even see you guys there. How was your time exploring the forest? I know I was able to find some really cool things. What we just did was called a survey. It's a scientific tool that real scientists use to kind of measure whether or not an ecosystem is healthy. So let's go ahead and pull out our journals. I'll pull out mine and we'll see what we were able to find. All right, this is my list right here. On the left side, I wrote down all the different species, and on the right side, I kind of made a numbered list for how many of them I was able to find. So I found 5, 10, 12 different redwood trees, 3 madrones, and the very last thing I found was 1 sword fern. Please excuse my messy handwriting. It looks like I was able to find a lot of different things, but I wasn't able to label all of them. Right here, I just wrote down gray mushroom. And down here, I wrote down black beetle. To the best of my knowledge, those aren't real species. So later today, I'll have to do more research, just like a real scientist, and try and figure out what kind of animals and mushrooms those were. Now that we feel good about this survey, we're going to actually go and start exploring the different types of things that we saw and how they all interact. And we're going to start with the very smallest at the ground level. We are now right in the middle of the redwood forests. And if you look at the ground around me, you'll find a lot of dead logs and stumps and dead leaves and dead branches and all sorts of stuff. And then when you look at the actual ground itself, you'll notice a thick coat of what we call duff, composed of the decaying matter of the redwood trees. And if you dig way beneath the duff, eventually you'll find a dark brown, grayish, rocky soil. What does the presence of all of this dead matter mean? Can the forest really be healthy if there's all these dead logs and leaves and all of this stuff all over the ground? The answer actually is yes. And the very first class of organisms that we're learning about today kind of explains why. Because they're called the decomposers, and what they're in charge of is decomposing all of this dead matter. You see, we are surrounded by huge redwood trees. And eventually, they fall down. And if it wasn't for the decomposers, they would stay on this ground forever. And they would just stay like this stick. And eventually, the forest would just get full of dead logs and everything like that. And nothing else would be able to grow because everything was just covered in fallen branches and trunks. But that's not actually what happens. In front of me, I have a old log. And it's covered in decomposers. What decomposers are organisms that break down dead plants and animals. They can be beetles, they can be fungi like this bad boy. And what they do is they break down the structures into their smallest part. So long ago, this tree, probably a redwood tree, but who knows anymore, it fell. And immediately the organisms and the decomposers started setting in. And now this is not a strong redwood tree. It's really soft. I can break it apart with my hand. And as I break it apart, I can see that there are more decomposers inside here. The decomposers are literally turning this log into dirt before our eyes. All right. After we have moved on from the decomposers and moved up from the ground, we're at the next level of our forest. And that, my friends, is the undergrowth. The undergrowth tells us a lot about the forest, and because of this type of undergrowth, we know that we're in a wet part of the forest. But actually, because there's so much undergrowth, that tells us that this part of the forest isn't as old or as healthy as other parts. Because redwood trees are so tall, they actually end up soaking most of the sunlight when they're at their oldest and healthiest, and there can't be much undergrowth at all. And so right now we're standing in a part of the forest that isn't as old. If we were to go into a true old growth forest, there would only be a little bit of undergrowth. We are now in one of our oldest parts of the redwood forest. And if you take a look at the undergrowth, you'll notice that it is a lot less here. That's because our redwood trees are way older, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years old. And they're soaking up all of the sunlight so it can't get to our undergrowth. The trees are the heart and soul of the forest, and here at Alliance Redwoods, we're blessed with a lot of different really cool types. Right here we have one of my favorite types, the sun-seeking madrone tree. They're incredibly phototropic. Say that with me, phototropic. What that means is that they seek the sunlight. Another type of tree we have are tan oaks. This guy right here. They also are pretty phototropic. You'll have some that are growing straight up like this guy right here, but then a lot of them are often and also leaning at crazy angles like this guy. Another tree that I found in my survey was the Douglas fir. And if that sounds familiar to you, it's probably because that's what you use for a Christmas tree. But here at Alliance Redwoods, our Douglas firs grow huge. In fact, they rival our redwoods in height and size. Because every single tree here is in a battle for its survival. And they each have a different strategy. But what they're fighting for isn't gold or trying to expand the borders of their country. Instead, what they're battling for is sunlight. And every tree has a different strategy. Our madrone trees, they twist and they wiggle through the forest trying to find little sun puddles. Our tan oaks have a similar strategy. Our Douglas firs, they try to grow in spots where the redwood trees cannot. Because truly, nothing can compete with our magnificent redwood trees. Because of course, we are in the magnificent coastal redwood forests. And yes, the madrones are important, and we love the tan oaks and the tall Douglas firs, but our keystone species is the mighty redwoods. The redwoods that are all around us, and every part of their biology impacts the forest around them. The way that they collect tannic acid limits the amount of plants in the undergrowth. The way that when they fall, the decomposers use them and then put them back into the soil so that a new tan oak can sprout. The way that when they're under stress, they start cloning themselves. This is a redwood forest, and at its healthiest, this is going to be primarily a redwood forest that limits the amount of other organisms that can live here. Is it a healthy redwood forest? That's actually for you to decide. I'm not going to answer that question, but throughout this video, I've given you a lot of evidence and tools to make a decision. So in the comment section below, I want you guys to give me a hypothesis about whether or not this is a redwood forest that is healthy or unhealthy, or maybe somewhere in the middle. State your hypothesis, give me some evidence, and then if you would like to take it a step further, do the exact same thing with your backyard. The ecosystem and the environment will be a little bit different, but with the tools we learn about today, you can do a little bit of research and talk to me about the ecosystem of your backyard. I've loved walking through the redwood forest with you guys today, and I hope you guys are doing well, and I can't wait to see what we'll be doing next. I'm Mandalorian, and this is the way.